Now I love this case because it's like straight up out of a movie, right? This 28-year-old guy who seemingly very, very normal, neighbors didn't have any idea what was going on, was leading in many ways what was considered one of the largest marketplaces for illegal behavior that the world had ever seen before. Making, total commerce was worth billions of dollars. So what do we learn from this?
Well, that's an interesting question. And I think, people get arrested all the time, right, for doing illegal behavior, selling drugs, all this kind of very similar things that Mr. Obrecht has been charged with and convicted for. But what's so special about this case as it relates to ethics in general, but particularly fintech ethics in particular?
Well, a couple things that immediately come to mind are the fact that because the nature of these types of crimes relating to fintech has become increasingly cyber, the ways that law enforcement now have to police these crimes has also become increasingly cyber, right? And so a lot of the tools that Mr. Obrecht and other people that were within that marketplace that they utilized in that dark web, law enforcement actually did use those same tools, right? So when they go undercover, for example, they're not literally going undercover where they're changing their identity or the way that they look, but they're creating usernames and other things, profiles, so they can kind of infiltrate those market spaces, which again could be remotely from somewhere in Wisconsin, for example, and talking to them in San Francisco or wherever he was. And personally, in some of the law enforcement work that I've done, it's the same thing, right? So a lot of the investigative work that you'll do is now sitting in front of a computer, trying to kind of put together financial documents and transactions and things to kind of identify where the various actors are. The second thing that immediately stands out is from an ethics standpoint, I find this really, really fascinating because here his stated mission was actually moral in nature, right? So Mr. Obrecht was essentially trying to create a marketplace. So he's libertarian, right? And believes that the government and regulation is inherently evil in some ways. That's what he claims. And so he wanted to create a marketplace that was free of these types of
government
restrictions.
interventions.
Exactly, right? And the way that he described that, the government should not have a monopoly on violence, for example, especially in terms of drug trafficking and whatnot. He believed, at least he claimed to believe, that this type of an online marketplace would actually be inherently more ethical and more moral than the violence that occurs, every day with drug trafficking into, say, the United States, right? And I think this goes back to the subjectivity of ethics and why it's so difficult to have kind of a global or even consistent dialogue concerning what is actually ethical. And I think it's going to become increasingly hard as in terms of the transnational and global nature of these types of not only crimes, but just commerce.
Yeah, so those are really interesting questions for me. I think kind of piggybacking a little bit on some of the things that you've said, I thought this was really fascinating because there have been, large-scale drug sellers in the past. So that actual aspect of the crime itself is not necessarily too unique historically, but it's the fact that he was able to rely on cryptocurrencies, particularly Bitcoin, to facilitate the transactions in a completely digital space, which create the safety that you're talking to, and raises questions of anonymity and privacy and the use cases of certain aspects of this technology, which I think is also compelling as well, and it's worth considering in the context of our course. Yeah,
it's only a matter of time, I guess, before like the next iteration of Narcos or whatever is going to be, the Bitcoin or Silk Road version of this, where they're going to have to explain how this entire kind of network of illegal behavior has kind of gone crypto.